guys.
Hello.
Hey,
Good morning.
thanks for having us.
Good morning. It's so nice to see you. And this little box world, we usually see each other in person. Um, we're here with the folks from Joy Music House. And, you know, for as long as I've known you guys, I don't actually think I know how things came about, and 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 where things started, and actually even like all the things that you do. I don't, yeah, and so I would love to chat with you right now. We're talking, pre-conference, and I think that this is really helpful information for people that are looking to work with any kind of orchestras, small or large, and yeah, what you guys do is help a lot of people, I know. So we can help more people here.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the way it got started was I moved to LA at the end of 2012, and obviously wanted to become a film composer, and that was a big priority, but I was still very new to the scoring scene. Um, and I wanted to get, paid to learn more about it, and I wanted to see how other people did it. So I started, just putting the word out in the composer community by, just meeting other composers through Society of Composers and Lyricists events and ASCAP I Create Expo, which is where I met Joe. Even before I moved down here, that's where I met Joe and another wonderful human, Nikhil Kapaker, who's also on the Night Temple conference. Um, and then I also started a networking event when I moved to LA to meet more people, which is still ongoing to this day. It's called the Film, Music, and Media Happy Hour, and that's how I met Robin, through that. He just saw it on Meetup and came to that, and they can tell their side of the stories. But so yeah, I just started telling composers that I'd love to help them out. And the first person I worked with was Miriam Cutler. She actually called me. I met with her when I'd come to visit LA and kind of indicated that I would love to work with her. And 7 days after I moved to LA, she called me and she's like, "Are you here?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I have two projects, one going to Sundance, one going to PBS. I really need some help, like music prep and things like that." And I was like, "Okay, so here we go." And as I got more and more work like that, I started calling Joe to help me. And then, Robin was taking care of like the Pro Tools side of things. And we just kept kind of putting a team together as more projects came in because I was balancing that kind of work, which we call score production, with, me being a film composer. Um, and it was a slow build, to the point of 2018 where, four projects that we had worked on were at Sundance. It was two docs by Miriam Cutler, RBG, which was a big one, and Dark Money, and the Joan Jett documentary, Bad Reputation, and the Netflix documentary series Wild Wild Country. So they were all premiering at Sundance. And that's when people were just like, what is this thing? Like this team? What's the deal?
Yeah,
And like, can we find out more information about it? And I was just like, no. Because the whole point, we were all film composers, and so we really made an effort to our website and our social media was all about us being composers. And the score production work was very much kind of on the down low and by word of mouth. Um, for the main reason of making sure that our identity was clear as film composers. So after Sundance, we kind of got together in my studio apartment and we're like, maybe we should make this a company.
mm,
Maybe we should brand. And if we make it a company, then, because at that point it was really Catherine and the team, which is how people
yeah,
knew us. And Joe and Robin's, contributions and other members of the team were critical.
yeah.
And I wanted them to have as much visibility as myself. So, we came up with Joy Music House. Joe came up with the name along Joe came up with Joy
Really?
Music. Yeah. And then Hope Thal, another team member, came up with House. We were like, should it be collective? Should it be society? Should it be whatever? I think I came up with the tagline of composers supporting composers. It's either me or Robin. And yeah, and so we just kind of, put together our mission statement, and Joe came up with the logo, and I reached out to everyone I had worked with to that point, like Miriam Cutler, Brocker Way, um, lots of people that I'm blanking on right now, and said, we're formally launching as a company. Can I put you on the client list? They said yes. Miriam and a few other people wrote us a little, recommendation
Oh,
thing that could go on the website, and then we picked a date in November, and we just launched. We all got together. We did a countdown on social media. We launched it on social media, all at the same time. And it caused quite a stir because, and it's something that Miriam Cutler and I had been talking about for a long time, this need for what we did for her, which is like basically we call it instant team. We come onto a project and we can help out in any way needed. We can do additional music. We can obviously orchestrate, copy, you know, get the recording session happening, get our contractor to get the musicians, like, or we can do like one thing if they just need one thing, if they already have other pieces in place. But it's providing that service for people who can't afford it year round, the people that aren't Hans Zimmer or Blake Neely or Bear McCreary, who can't even afford an assistant full time.
yeah. Yeah.
And I
Um,
think for people who sometimes know they need help but don't know exactly what they need, sometimes they come to us instead of sort of flailing around blindly. They can just call us
Mhm.
and say, "This is where the project is. This is where the project needs to get to," and then we can say,
Yeah.
"Cool, what about this?"
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's also like, what we did for Miriam, and she would be the first one to talk about this, is it's kind of making the process fun again because like
Mm.
you can do everything yourself now, technically.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting and it can be
Yeah.
miserable, and it's so much more fun having, having people as part of your process. It
Yeah.
takes a second to figure out, and I think for a lot of people it's challenging. They're like, I don't know when to bring you in, or I don't know what I can delegate. And I'm like, we can figure
Yeah.
that out. Like it does take a second to figure it out when you're used to doing everything yourself, but it's also really liberating. And the main thing I ask people is like, what don't you want to be doing? Like, what is part of your process?
Yeah.
Hey, you can hand that off to someone. Yes, you need to pay them, but you make up for that in like quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're also, I think another huge part about bringing people into your process is keeping this tradition of mentorship and uh, what is it? Oh, apprenticeship alive,
Mhm.
which music traditionally always had this apprenticeship
Yeah.
angle. And
Yeah.
now it's like go to school and then do it on your own. And and there's something really missing in that equation. And Joe, do you want to add anything to this? Because I feel like y- like Joe, I met Joe first and kind of brought him into my process, I think, before Robin. So we've been, musically working together for a really long time.
Yeah, I had kind of just gone freelance right beforehand, and Catherine started calling around because I immediately contacted her as soon as I
Mm.
left my corporate job, and
Yeah.
just asked Catherine if she knew of people and she would recommend me, and I would get jobs. I did some work for Panka, and then she brought me in to work with her and Miriam, and the vibe on that was great. And so we are still working together. We have another project coming up in in a couple of months,
Yeah.
probably like a couple of weeks at this point. But yeah, and it's just kind of continued from there. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
but getting to be uh oh, I completely lost my train of thought there.
You're mostly on the orchestration side, right?
Yeah, I oversee like orchestration, notation, and I've kind of come up with a somewhat style guide that's an amalgamation of a lot of different best practices. A
Mm.
lot of it is just distilled from Gould.
Yeah.
Gould.
St. Gould.
Elaine Gould. You have
Uh,
to name the book.
Yes.
Not
Behind
everyone knows.
Yes, of course. You mean this book right here? The
Yes.
one that's always within reach. Um,
Behind bars.
it even looks like a Bible there, Joe.
Yeah. I have fights with Joe about Elaine Gould all the time because I don't necessarily agree with her, but on some things, but that's part of the fun of being in a team. I mean, the breakdown now is that, I'm this the corporate name is CEO and the founder, and I oversee everything. I take the lead on client relations, although I
Yeah.
share that, a lot with Robin.
Mm.
And then on our recording sessions, I'm usually producing the session. I'm the main producer for the team, although we do have a few other people who produce as well. And then Robin, if you want to talk about your part in this.
Mhm.
We're kind of an amazing like three-way Venn diagram, to be honest, because Catherine came from a much more properly trained world musically, and I'm obviously a heavy metal dude. But I had a lot of technical knowledge. I studied engineering.
Mm.
Um, and then Joe is just like the wizard of orchestration and down into nitty-gritty things like fonts and margins and stuff that uh
I have no
make all
patience.
our music, not just the music sound good, but our sheet music looks really good too.
Really
Um,
good.
so yeah, Catherine and I juggle a lot of the day-to-day stuff, but she's um probably one of the best networkers on earth. So she's very good with people. I handle a lot of the business stuff day to day. And then, in the beginning, yeah, I was literally making Pro Tools sessions. And I still jump in and do that a lot. I still do take notes a lot because when we're in sessions, because I want them to be right.
Mm.
And I don't, it's really, really, it
He's
makes a
really good at
difference when
it.
those things are done right. So there are other people on the team who can do it, um, but I like that role. And then
Yeah.
Joe, um, you know, is there with all of overseeing all of the actual sheet music prep and
Mm.
copying and formatting. And I send everything to Joe on my own projects, if for nothing else than a final like, hey, will you look at this and make sure I haven't done something stupid before we go to the stage. Um,
I think I feel this way, and I think Robin's there too, where it's like I don't like music going out, in a film but especially for live recording or performance if Joe hasn't looked at it. Like, it's he's my security blanket. And then, for me, the perfect I just love being at recording sessions where Joe is, booth reading and he's listening to everything and Robin's there taking notes. We've done so many recording sessions together now where,
Mm.
there's a bit of a mind meld that happens and and a real understanding too of how each other works. And I mean, this is a beautiful thing about building a team, and I feel like everyone should build a team. We want to work with people, obviously, but you know, um, we love coming into other people's teams and seeing how it works because having people to create music with who have an understanding of your process is really wonderful and comforting.
Yeah.
We love doing a number of the recording sessions we've done for our own music, for like my scores or Joe or Robin's scores, and I think that's super fun. We love producing other people's music, but it's so fun when we get to do our own.
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
I
mean,
think I think that what sets us apart a little bit from some of the other, music prep services is not that I'm sure they don't love recording, but for us, it's very much the focus.
Yeah.
So many of the other roles that we do are ultimately the vehicle to get into the studio,
Yeah.
which is where we want to be.
Yeah.
mm,
Um, and then we work with our clients often all the way through the recording process, um, effectively as producers. I mean, and that I see the relief on a lot of composers' faces when they come into the studio and realize
But
they don't have to do anything except listen to the music and say yes or no,
Yeah.
and we will handle the rest of it. Because it's intense. I think the first time I produced my own session, I feel like I just blacked out, and then it was an hour later, and I didn't know if anything was actually good. So, us being able to be there as a third party, um,
yeah,
it's not only, functionally very useful. I think there's a real, almost like emotional value to it because we all know how intense these productions are and how
yeah,
the late nights and the long hours and, you know, grinding all the way to the finish line. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
um, you know, we
And
We
come in
just
and make it a
allow,
little bit better.
yeah, we allow the composer just to in this session just to be purely creative. They don't have to worry about running the session. They don't have to worry about, where are we going to start from and where should we punch and do we have everything? Because we're taking care of that. And they can just really make sure that it sounds the way that they want it to sound. And also if the director or the producer is there, it gives them the freedom just to be with them and make sure they're happy and they're liking what they're hearing. So it's just
yeah.
it takes that kind of pressure off. And then, there's some composers who phenomenal musicians, but they don't read music. That's just not,
Mm,
or they don't read music quickly. And the thing
yeah,
about being in the studio is you need to read music quickly.
Yeah.
yeah,
When when you hear something that's wrong, need to be able to identify it and fix it immediately,
Yeah.
which is, and you need to be out of someone who can cope with that kind of stress, which is
yeah,
the person that I am.
yeah,
Um, but I think that's difficult for a lot of people, and it can be even more difficult when it's your own project and there's just a lot of pressure there.
Yeah.
And so, it's a real gift to give to composers where, you know, they we give them a score, they can't really read it, but they get to hear it and then they can if they hear something that's weird, they're like, that sounds weird. Can we check that out? And we're like, sure. And one thing that we've done over the years is like provide a little bit of therapy for composers who've had really bad orchestrator experiences because there is
mm,
kind of a stereotypical orchestrator in Hollywood, a certain kind of person, looks a certain kind of way, has a bit of a chip on their shoulder, tells you everything that's wrong with your composition, and is a dick about it. And or has even like a number of composers we've worked with have worked with previous orchestrators who've literally changed their music. They've changed it,
mm.
changed the notes. Which it
Same.
for me and like so
Yeah.
that's for me as a composer, that's like a horrifying
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And so that's, one of our rules is you do not change a note. Now, if you hear something that's a mistake, you flag it and
Yeah.
talk to the composer, or if you see something that could be done better and will record better, then that's literally your job is to flag.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
just don't go through and change things willy-nilly
Yeah.
because like this
Crazy.
music has already been approved by the director. Like that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like illegal,
Well,
straight to
I
jail.
think
So,
just
yeah.
Yeah.
you can, it could be really overwhelming to have all of the music and not the kind of team, that that can be on hand full time. Hiring a team is a whole other different expense usually. And there's, the kind of emotional benefits of that, but it's not something everybody always has on hand. And just like
Yeah.
knowing that there's an actual team of people that have emotional, um, sensitivity
Yeah.
and support to actually help you in a way that makes the experience, of completing a film really enjoyable. I think there's great value to that because there's been times that, even for us, with our indie scores where we're just like buried in, um you know in a mess.
Yeah.
We'll be up till 6 a.m. trying to kind of sort through it, and at times like that, I didn't even know there was such a thing as being able to actually have an instant team there that you can have a conversation with,
Yeah.
and and talk about what part do you like, what part do you not like,
Yeah.
and how can the rest of the process feel, less overwhelming and less, yeah, terrifying and overwhelming.
Yeah,
Which,
totally.
we've definitely had that, experience before of yeah, how to get from here to there, and then things can take so much longer as well. Um, and we've had that experience before too, even just with really dense shorts where it's like taken months that, ideally would have taken a lot less time if there was actual support. Because, you might think something's a lower budget, but if you consider the time that you spend on it, and if you consider your time as being valuable, then it actually makes it more money that you're losing by not having support.
And
Um,
sometimes people hire, they're like, I don't have much money, so I'm going to hire like someone that's maybe super green or new to the industry.
right.
Like what they save in maybe a per hour fee, they lose in the amount of hours because that person hasn't, they're not an expert. They haven't been through this experience.
Yeah, that's
And
it. It's
so,
the amount of
yeah,
hours.
yeah,
Yeah.
the amount of hours. So it's like bringing in people who are pros and who are just like, like we've done this before and what's your budget? Okay, cool. So we can get it in that done in that amount of time. And I think the other thing too is like, for composers who maybe do have a bit of budget, what they used to have to do is they would have to put a team together, and that takes time, like
Mm,
someone to do this and someone to do this, and all those people may not know each other, or they may not have like one form of communication, whereas we have systems in place, we have spreadsheets, we have worked together on so many projects that we have a shorthand with each other, and so it's like
so
all of
good.
that is taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I think
that's,
because we're all composers as
Yeah.
well, often we're functioning as orchestrators or music editors or arrangers or whatever's needed on the project. But because we're all composers, we understand exactly what you're going through.
Mm.
We've all been there and we know how to speak the language, which,
yeah.
I think is really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you work with all kinds of budgets, right? And all kinds of orchestras as well. It's not
Yeah.
located anywhere. It doesn't have to be like, anyone can reach out with to have a conversation with you. They don't need to feel afraid of the rate or anything else. They can
Yeah,
just,
absolutely. I mean, we're like, always like, what is the budget? And like, and
yeah.
there's a few strategies on utilizing that budget. You can, often it's kind of a thing where it's like, well, if you're recording in the States, things, whether it's soloists or ensembles, like that usually costs a bit more.
Mm,
And you record overseas. Um, and we work a lot with FAMES in North Macedonia or with the Budapest orchestras, and
mhm.
so that price point is very different. And
Yeah.
so you can just talk about like what is the sound you want, what are the different options. We're
Yeah.
constantly connecting with people all over the place and kind of expanding, the ensembles and the people we work with. It's super exciting. I mean, I think that's the really cool thing about today is that it is, like you can work with people all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And we've been all over and we've recorded everything from full orchestra to jazz to a tiki band.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so
well, that's
it's,
great to know too. I think,
Yeah.
people that
So
it's not just it could be any kind of
yeah, so
Mhm.
we've done band
recording. Yeah.
charts, for the tiki band situation and for
Mhm.
jazz projects and it's
Irish ensemble.
what was
Yeah.
it?
That
The Irish ensemble.
Oh, the Irish
oh
ensemble.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that
That's
was fun.
really cool to know too, because there's there was a time a few years ago where we had a Hawaiian film, and it was really hard to figure out how to, like, it felt so overwhelming to try to understand how to incorporate real musicians who
Yeah.
might have that specific understanding. Yeah. So I mean, just the fact that it's not just a traditional orchestra, that you guys can work with different types of ensembles, that is really cool. That's
Yeah.
specifically really cool to me as
I
Yeah.
mean,
I
yeah.
think you'd have to come to us with one of the most obscure instruments in the world for us not to have a person. Challenge accepted. But we've had, we get requests like, hey, I need a blank, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we reach out and it seems like in a few hours it's like, okay, we've got one.
Yeah.
Which is
I
it's just
mean,
it's
just
cool.
not having to deal with that too is
Yeah.
like is a blessing when you're already overwhelmed with running a project. Just
Yeah.
being able to go, hey, I can delegate that, and that's
Yeah.
not like something I have to actually be concerned about. Somebody else has like got it covered.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool.
I mean, we're really just obsessed with keeping, you know, the live scoring and live recording alive. It's I think it's something that we've all fallen in love with, and there's nothing like, working with a musician to bring your music to life and hearing what they do, hearing what they contribute to that,
Yeah, yeah,
We're
and
so
it's
fortunate to work with some of the best musicians who are just also our friends.
yeah.
So
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
at this point, there's also that. I mean, it's kind of benefits everybody in the ecosystem. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now a big part of our vision is educating filmmakers and bringing them into this process so they can really understand and get excited about the value of live music.
Yeah,
It's
with your courses, I've always been curious. I know that you do them, but I don't know what happens in them. It's so funny to just be friends with people for so long. Just why has this never come up before?
story. When people ask me what my sister did, I was like, she wears a lab coat, like I was like, I can't go in, I can't explain that.
I
Yeah, I
just
So
mean,
know
our
you guys as composers. You're all, amazing composers. That's how I know you. And
Yeah.
and I never think about the I guess none of us do with each other, like you said. Yeah.
We know your music. I mean,
Yeah,
we know
exactly. We don't know
well
what the
that
course
we're
is
doing our
about.
branding right. So yeah, we have a workshop right now, the score production workshop, and that is focused on teaching working composers the craft of going into the studio and recording with live players,
Mm,
particularly with orchestral ensembles, just because it can be more complicated communicating
yeah,
with a group of people rather than a soloist.
yeah,
and even
So
with a
that
soloist, there's
even with, yeah.
complications. Yeah.
yeah,
So the whole preparation process, what to expect, how to talk to them, how to give effective feedback, how to request changes in a way that, doesn't make the musicians feel like they didn't do it right, all
mm,
those sort of things you have to manage at the same time as you're tearing up $100 bills in a studio.
yeah.
Um, that's the focus of the current workshops, and it's a lot of fun. It's really fantastic watching composers come in and dive in, and just watching them from day one to day two, from like very nervous to like, oh wait, I can do this. And then
Yeah.
we've had people graduate the workshop and turn around and produce a session the next week, which is super gratifying to see
Yeah.
that
Wow, that's
happen.
cool.
The thing that I found when I came to LA, especially, was that, just because you're a composer doesn't mean that you can run a recording session well.
Yeah,
And I got to see a lot of people really kind of floundering in this area, and also learned that, I think partly because I'd been on the other side of the glass, I'd been a lifelong musician. I understood how to speak to musicians. I understood how to communicate effectively, and
mm,
that there was a real craft to that I had to develop. But once I had figured it out, I was so in love with it. And it's and if you don't know how to do it effectively, then being in the studio can be a really frustrating experience while you're, as Robin said, hemorrhaging money.
yeah,
Um, the thing we try to provide with the workshop is a lot of education and preparation through Zoom classes. But the other thing that we do that, I don't even feel like university programs do, because I teach at NYU, I'm adjunct faculty there, and then I guest teach all over the place. The thing I see is that, students producing sessions with their teachers sitting right next to them, kind of ready to swoop in and help anytime they need help. But they don't see a professional producing a session.
yeah. Yeah.
So with our studio days, the
Yeah.
first half of the day is a masterclass where they get to see me and the rest of the team producing. So they get to see it before they do it. And then
Yeah.
when they do it, they're in the hot seat alone with their booth reader, but we're not helping
Yeah.
because we really want people to have a professional experience. It's like you spent money, this is your time in the seat, and now you're producing your session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then afterwards they get feedback from me and the rest of the team, but it's a very professional experience. So I
Yeah.
think that's where we're really different from, the different university and college programs around.
Yeah.
Um, and uh and yeah, working with, the best musicians in town as well. And the really cool thing about the workshops is that we're doing them union as well. So it's fully supported by the AFM. When we do
Yeah.
the LA workshops, the president of the AFM, Stephanie O'Keefe, comes and speaks to the participants, and
Mm.
it's just really cool to be part of that community.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, yeah, it's really, you know, like I've seen some photos and videos and stuff from the students from your courses, and I mean, it definitely doesn't look like school. It looks like,
Yeah.
they're having a
Well, we
very
do. We don't even call them students. We call them participants because,
participants. Yeah.
we want to be
Nice.
working with working composers and just kind of next leveling their their abilities and the tools that they have in their tool belt for being a working composer.
I mean, I feel like before I got a lot of hands-on, direct experience, before basically I started dating this person and marrying this person. But before that, I was so overwhelmed by these concepts because I had, written a lot of orchestral music that I would have just I would have just loved, someone to let to get me over my fear or over that barrier and over that feeling of the unknown. And I feel like just having that gave me such a imposter syndrome,
Mm.
like I wrote the thing but I don't know how to get, that experience of being recording, like you said, live musicians, as opposed to working in the MIDI that I had, only had my only experience with. I mean, I feel like it's just invaluable, um, as it's been invaluable for me to have access to string player and string players. I feel like, yeah, what you guys, offer is this, invaluable feeling of confidence, I guess, and
Yeah.
and and
Possibility.
possibility,
Yeah.
and like a bridge, I guess, is what I'm thinking. That's probably the word I want to use. Like just
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
making that bridge. I never had that bridge because I
Yeah.
didn't have that bridge for so long. And even and I produced operas and I still felt like just like I didn't like let's hope nobody notices you know that I'm terrified of this and I don't feel comfortable with it and just oh yeah, I mean, I think you guys offer a bridge for people that I didn't even know existed. And
Yeah. And I think it's cool because we all have that feeling, like what Robin was saying about blacking out, kind of the first
blacking out.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so real, and every time I sit down to produce my music or someone else's, I have the butterflies, and and we it the stakes are high. Like I know we're not, doing surgery or saving lives, but there's every time you step into a studio, there's a lot of money involved, and if you're producing someone else's work, it's all the sacrifice and everything they've poured into that. So it's a big deal. And I think, and when you're doing your own music, it comes with a whole nother level of, I mean, Robin just he did an album for around his 40th birthday,
An
and that
amazing
was
album.
that was an experience. I mean, I think the cool thing, and Robin, you can speak to this a bit, and Joe too, but the cool thing about Joy Music House is I think it's, you know, every time we go into the studio to do someone else's music, we just get more motivated to go into the studio and do our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been a
Yeah.
great side effect. It hasn't, people sometimes say to me, "Do you have time for your own music?" And it's like, "Oh, I prioritize it now more than ever just because working on other people's stuff just makes me want to write my own and inspires me to write my own music."
Yeah.
And I think, we've done hundreds of recording sessions at this point, and I feel
Yeah.
like I learned something myself in every single one.
Every
And
time.
or, some little technique or some little thing I want to do different. Or I mean, we had a session last year. I was working on a horror film and I was stuck. And then we were producing a session and they were doing these, it was also like horror thriller stuff, and they were just using everything was playing as light as possible
Yeah.
instead of the usual like grinding. This was just so delicate and eerie, and it was like, oh my God, this is what I need. I went home and finished
Yeah.
like my own score that night,
Yeah.
just being like, that was the technique. That's why the scene wasn't working. This is brilliant. And
Yeah.
I
and
think this is the
it's
thing,
great.
right? When you're alone in a world of aloneness, it's like that inspiration can it just the joy can come out of it, no pun
Yeah.
intended. But you can it's like music should be joyous and that's and inspiring and fun, right?
Yeah.
So it should be this fun experience. But sometimes when you are alone with it, like, I just having other people to bounce, not even that you're bouncing ideas off them, but just having, the experience of working in teams, the joy just starts to come back into it as everybody's kind of energy and love, you know, comes comes together to make a project work, and that in turn feeds your own, and that is like, the inspiration that feeds your own stuff as well. Like being in teams can just sometimes, I don't know, I don't know if I'm articulating what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say, right? But
Oh,
it's like if you bring the fun, not saying that like, because you were talking about learning something from every experience, but when you talk about that, that's the most exciting thing in the world to me, and that's like the most fun thing in the world to me, and that's the thing that is like the gift of being around other people
yeah.
and hearing other people's music and sharing space with other people is so exciting,
Yeah.
because it makes music joyous, and then it feeds you when you're on your own.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
Sorry, so I just put, I don't know, my own crazy way of saying the same thing, I guess, that you guys just said. But
No,
yeah,
that's
I
great.
mean, I think that's super cool, basically, is, my my point. But yeah.
The
But
energy exchange is vital in creative realm
yes,
everywhere.
yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's just it's a constant, yeah.
Yeah.
The energy exchange is vital in creative form. I feel like that is just, yeah, so beautiful and so um amazing about what you guys do. Just
Yeah.
creating emotional support as well as creative support, emotional support, and yeah, and
Another thing we're really into is creating community, and just
unity. Yeah,
even though, someone at the QTube Night Temple JMH event last night, they were saying like, how can I be part of Joy Music House? And while we're not, the team is pretty much, we can't expand it any further right now. Um, we do a lot of events, with other, groups like yourself, and
yeah,
we do community parties because I think
yeah,
a huge part of this is just bringing people together and getting people talking to each other. Um, it's cool with the first workshop we did. Christian Amundsen signed up to be an auditor, and he emailed me before it started, and he's like, I just want to be fully transparent and say that I'm coming to the workshop because I want to steal all your ideas and do them myself. And I was just like, that's awesome. Like, I fully encourage you to do so. Like, we want everyone to emulate this. Like,
Yeah.
some of my students are like, we're thinking of starting kind of a team like Joy Music House. Like, how do you feel about this? I was like, do it. I mean, we're not proprietary over what we're doing. The whole, like a big part of this for me when we started it was just to show the our industry that you can have a team um, in score production where everyone's treated well and and paid, like paid a good wage. Like, I know we're not always paid well, but we're always trying to pay people something very reasonable for the time they're putting in. I think in the world of score production, historically there's been a lot of exploitation and also a lot of mistreatment, of people in these roles that aren't the star lead composer role.
Mhm.
And I do think that's absolute bullshit and completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of people who've worked on teams that are like, where the vibe is more fear-based, where they're like constantly fearful of making a mistake, and
Mm.
which I think is ridiculous. Even if you're like a complete sociopath, having people in fear-based teams, I think is not productive.
Yeah.
People don't do their best work.
Just
At
on a,
So
on a,
all.
even
on
if
a
you're just
pragmatic
worried,
level. Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
that?
On a pragmatic level.
On,
Yeah.
On
on
a
a
pragmatic,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
on
bad
a
business in
financial
the long
bottom
term.
line, it's like
Yeah.
if people are scared to ask a question, they're just going to go down the wrong path and do bad work.
Yeah.
And so, just kind of putting a team together that has a very positive, we're professional, we have fun, but we're very professional and the standards are extremely high. The thing that we've learned is that you can have a recording session with no mistakes. That's actually a possibility. And we
Mm.
try not to get there by cracking the whip. We try to get there by fostering like best practices and, good communication and, a good proofreading routine and
Yeah.
all of that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's just like we want to really work to the point where like this is what a healthy, sustainable, positive team looks like. And the
Yeah.
other cool thing about JMH is that within the core team of ourselves, like when we get big scoring projects for ourselves, we can step back and the other ones can continue to run the team.
Yeah.
Well, and with the rest of the team, it's like they're all contract based. So if when we have a project, it's like,
Yeah.
you
Then
want to work on this, how much time do you have? Because we want to support everyone else's composing careers.
yeah.
We're kind of training people with the expectation that they will, grow into successful composers and hopefully grow into clients and
Yeah.
hire us to produce
Hmm.
Yeah.
their scores, which has happened multiple times already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
Um,
Well, I love what you guys do, and we appreciate you guys so much in our, community. We share pretty much all of and most events with you guys, and it's a really amazing thing that you guys offer composers. I wish, I'd known about you years and years ago. And I'm glad I know you now, and I, will use you guys in the future. So I
We
never
can't
have
wait.
those weird experiences again.
Yeah, we can't wait to produce your music. That
Yeah.
goes for everyone watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're super excited to have you all at the conference.
Yes. And
Yeah.
All three of you are performing tomorrow night.
Yeah, on Friday night.
On Friday night.
Yeah.
And
You have the score production panel that Robinton is moderating, and Catherine is a panelist, and Joe is a panelist on the environmental sound
Yeah, it's going to be a great
panel as
one.
well. Yeah, and that's going to be moderated by Radhika. And I
Oh,
feel like
awesome.
that's going to be really
that's gonna be
interesting.
fun.
That's going to be really fun. And the score production, of course, is going to be really fun as well. And there's yeah, amazing people on that panel too. And we can't wait to hear your music and your pieces. And we had Snapshot yesterday, and it was extremely exciting. So I can't wait to see it live on the
Well,
stage.
it's such a gift what you guys do, giving us these performance opportunities and
I just
uh,
love live. I just
you know,
love live. I
it's,
can't live my life without live performance. It's like
yeah,
air
nothing.
breathing for me. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys. Thanks.
and see you tomorrow.
see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.